When humanity was first encountered, they were below the standard of galactic consciousness, below the need for anyone to care. They lagged behind us in terms of tech, weaponry, colonization, and economic prowess. When we first found them, they were more excited to meet us than we were to meet them. They were, after all, beneath our notice. We exchanged information, settled borders, and even had an issue where they colonized a planet within someone else's borders. They resolved it peacefully and simply walked away, deciding to abandon the planet and system entirely, resettling somewhere else instead of potentially starting a war. We decided not to investigate further and simply left them alone. This turned out to be a bad idea. So here is a precursory note before the story even begins. We as a galaxy have all but abandoned so-called analog modes of warfare. All battles are done by gigaton capacity laser technology and shielding. Giant warships with heavy lasers that can strike targets at up to 250 miles. Ranges that are considered the standard for any form of modern battle. This is due to how prohibitive most weapons systems are. Ballistic munitions require powder primers and other such things that aren't very safe. Munitions that cause more damage to the ship than they can inflict on the enemy, if the enemy gets lucky or knows what they are doing. It's also impossible to manufacture such things in space unless you have a craft with its own refinery and manufacturing facilities, which aren't very economical in large ship fleets. Railgun technology was also phased out by the community, Gauss tech even more so, for similar reasons. The energy weapons, lasers, masers, and pulse laser tech simply outweighed other options. Some empires use railguns, but focus almost entirely on laser technology. Especially modern armaments such as the Imperiet's primary turbomaser batteries that can vaporize a city block. In short, the galaxy has a reliance on laser weaponry, short or long range, and it's all to do with economics and industry. It's not that we can't, it's that it's too expensive. Lasers offer a better, more honorable, more economically viable option. Fuel is also not a real concern when you have a laser-based ship. Hydrogen fusion reactors and other such technologies can be scaled up to almost any size, and when looking for fuel for these systems, simply wandering about in the universe can keep you fueled for millennia. An easier option even than that is to simply find a local gas giant, skim some gas off the top, and keep yourself full of all the fuel you could need for the next year. Even at full power, a modern dreadnought only uses a few gigawatts worth of energy, simply due to the fact these systems run with efficiency in mind. Battles and fights use up more energy, of course, but when fights last only a few hours at most due to the energy and damage output thanks to the gigantic superweapon quality lasers, it doesn't mean much in the long run. Then come the humans, who barely use lasers for anything above point defense. Human ships are, for basic classification, around roughly twice the size of the galactic standard. They have a significantly larger class roster than we do, but in terms of crew complement, economy and whatnot, we are on relatively even ground. In terms of their shielding capacity, they are slightly below average. In terms of armor plating, slightly above average. And in terms of weapon quality, average. What we didn't account for was humanity and their insanity. We didn't count for a species that had no chill according to them. Neither did the Skakandi pirates. History lesson. The Skakandi pirates were, emphasis on were, a race of barbarian pirate raiders who raided, stormed, pillaged, and stole in order to survive. Typical warrior-like species. Although very, very limited in number, mostly confined to scattered asteroid bases in far-flung systems, they were a serious threat to anyone they encountered. They had been plaguing the galaxy for several decades, their largest fleet only around 40 or so ships, but containing sufficient weaponry to pose a serious threat to an unaware force of any reasonable size. Enter humanity and the TSR Cassandra's Revenge, a single missile cruiser protecting one of their colony worlds. A point of contention that the galaxy had abandoned just before leaving their home systems due to multiple constraints. Missiles used their own fuel to fire, had limited capacity for ships as they were large, requiring a significant portion of any ship's volume to store. They also required various conveyance and secondary systems, pipe networks, and hazardous storage bays in order to be used in any capacity. They were just too much to handle long-term, so most military forces and empires simply began to phase them out of existence. Missiles very quickly became far too limiting for most people to use, so were almost universally abandoned by all but the most stubborn of races, and even so always used in a very limited capacity. Missiles themselves were also of limited use in modern battle owing to better shielding technology and better laser tech that could shoot them down. Missiles were prohibitively expensive in every way we could measure, so they were universally abandoned for cheaper, stronger, and more effective methods. Humans apparently didn't know this fact. So how shocking was it for the galaxy to come to the understanding? Humans had dedicated, fully operational, and battle-proven warships, whose entire weapons complement consisted of missiles and rockets. The Skakandi had the biggest shock of all of us when they decided to raid a human colony world for food supplies, thinking it was an easy battle. Turns out the battle lasted exactly 2 minutes and 23 seconds. Skakandi warships don't exactly have the range advantage in the galaxy, their flagship having the best range with its Macer cannon at 180 miles. That meant nothing. They appeared in the system and demanded tribute or torture. They often used torture to extort victims into more food or fuel. The human garrison responded in kind with a missile barrage. Normally, missile barrages consisted of maybe 50 or so projectiles launched from 10 or so ships, followed by laser fire. More as a method of intimidation or distraction, rather than an actual means to damage an opponent. The Cassandra's Revenge fired over 800 missiles in 3 consecutive volleys, at nearly 2,000 miles in range. By the time the Skakandi pirate fleet knew what was about to hit them, it was far too late. They bullied their way straight into a missile swarm, and in the blink of an eye, half the fleet was gone. This is partly due to the fact they had their shields down on approach, saving energy capacitors for full engagement, as is the standard. They realized they were outmatched, but being the warriors they were, they wouldn't surrender, and continued their advance, missiles, right into the second volley of missiles. Having shields built exclusively to defend against lasers, the energy fields did basically nothing against the missiles, who wiped out the rest of the fleet, severely damaging the flagship. The Skakandi finally realized their mistake and decided to retreat. Volley number 3, however, hit them hard at that point, and that was the end of it. Sounds simple enough, isn't it? The humans just responded with overwhelming numbers of munitions just like any fleet would, and it basically won them the battle. Not so. It's a lot more complex than that. A lot more. Firstly, not only do humans have the industrial capacity to field warships with thousands of missiles, they also have more than one type of munitions. Lasers and other such energy weapons deal a combination of electromagnetic or thermal damage to a target. The energy spike from a sudden directed burst of energy causing damage to electronics, the heat from the energy causing damage that melts or evaporates armor plating. Shields either deflect or absorb that energy burst depending on the type, and shut down if the energy they face is too great. Everybody knows this. Human weaponry is a combination of basically every type of damage you can imagine. Let's use their missiles for basic understanding, and you can connect the dots themselves. Each missile carries a payload, yes? A warhead that carries the part that does the damage. The rest of the galaxy uses 2 types of damage, as previously stated, and very rarely the other 2. Humans use 7, 7, 7. And of those 7, the galaxy has no resistance of any kind, even in terms of shielding, to 3 of those 7. You have the 4 basic types of damage and resistance. Granted, this is about as simplified as I can make it, and I apologize for treating you like an infant in my descriptions. But I don't have a millennium to take you through a course on starship construction, do I? Electromagnetic, thermal, kinetic, and explosive. Electromagnetic affects electronics, thermal melts things, kinetic hits things, and explosive explodes things. Simple enough. Humans apparently have an extra 3 damage types, which are ion, nuclear, and plasma. Ion is a significantly more dangerous variant of electromagnetic damage in that it uses a highly concentrated burst of ion-charged energy particles to blast a target with so much electrical energy, it effectively fries anything it touches. Nuclear. Well, you know what nuclear weapons are, obviously, and humans have these things called thermonuclear warheads, which are essentially a nuclear warhead, used to detonate a much bigger nuclear warhead. Yes, it is indeed insane. But they don't seem to care. Plasma is an odd one because it is a mechanism we don't fully understand yet. Apparently, it superheats a bolt of solid metal or composite alloy of some kind, then fires this bolt at high speed. It's sort of like taking a flaming hot ball of metal and flinging it at something really, really fast. Depending on the composition of the bolt, it can either ionize its target, causing electrical failure, or explode, both melting through armor plating or causing an explosive force. Or all three if the gun that fires it is big enough. Apparently. See Part 2.